Welcome to the Action Network studio in New York City. I'm Maria Marino, and this is Green Dot Daily. We're live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app, and if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Coming up on the show, the World Series begins tonight. So Anthony Dabbundo and Sean Zerillo will drop by with a preview. We'll also get college football and soccer picks, but we start with one of the more intriguing matchups on the NFL slate here in Week 8. 49ers opened as 6-point favorites. That line moved to 3.5 with news of a Brock Purdy concussion. It's now at 4.5. Sam Darnold expected to start in place of Purdy. Majority of bets and money are on the Cincy side. As we say hello to Stuckey and Chris Raybon. So Darnold was brought in to compete with Purdy for the starting job this season. We know how that went. How does your opinion on betting this game, Raybon, change with the QB swap, if at all?
For a while, Maria, but the Niners, looking to fade them, and they're kind of banged up right now. They're just out of sorts, just beyond the quarterback position. So had this game circled for Cincinnati, regardless, before the injury to Purdy, the news came out, because when you look at Cincinnati, their whole season, you've really had an injured Joe Burrow. So I think the bye week, really important for him to hopefully get as close to full health as he can be this year. And this Cincinnati defense, Lou Anarumo, great schemer. So you give him an extra week to prepare for one of the league's best offenses. We've seen him in the past, in the playoffs, stifle Kansas City, Buffalo, teams like that. So I think this is a great matchup for Cincinnati. You also have, their offense is one of the few, I think, that, if you need to go methodically down the field, even with a injured Burrow, they were still able to do that, long drives. Sometimes you have to do that against San Francisco. But in theory, a healthier Burrow should lead to more explosives. You got Higgins healthy, Chase, so I think this is just a great matchup for Cincinnati, regardless of the quarterback shenanigans. And, we're hearing Purdy's flying through the protocol. So I think that's why the line is kind of stuck in that, 4.5. It was 3.5 when we thought he was going to be out, 5.5 when we thought he was going to be in. But either way, I think it's a great spot for Cincinnati, as long as you're getting more than a field goal.
So just clarifying, that is an official pick for you, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I already bet this.
Okay. Got it. Well, it's the first time this season the Bengals are underdogs. Second time this season, the Niners will face a team that's coming off a bye, so kind of a tough break. The first was Cleveland back in Week 6. Niners, of course, on shorter rest after that loss to Minnesota Monday. And Stuckey, I assume you're on board as well.
Yeah, I like the Bengals here as well. Look, it's going to be a couple point downgrade to Sam Darnold. We know who Sam Darnold is. He's not good. And plus, you have this quarterback uncertainty with someone else you presumably have to get into the lineup on a short week, which isn't ideal against a Bengals team that has extended rest off the bye. And this, look, not only was Burrow dealing with an injury, but we saw this each of the past 2 seasons. Burrow missed time leading up to camp. He had his appendix removed one year, he had a knee injury another, and then this year he had a calf, and he always started slow. And then, after he gets kind of his timing and rhythm down, that's when really this offense takes off. And that's why Burrow, I think historically, has been about 70% against the spread from Week 7 on. So I think this is a good spot to back the Bengals off of a bye in a game that they really need in the really tough and competitive AFC North against a reeling San Francisco team that's dealing with a number of injuries across the board. So I agree. I like the Bengals here at anything over a field goal.
Yeah, and Burrow, he's 14-2 against the spread as an underdog by a field goal or more. So in addition to kind of heating up later in the year, just any time he's been an underdog, this is when you've seen this team exceed expectations, partly because of Burrow, partly because I think of some great defensive scheming as well.
There you go. Okay, Stuckey, it's your turn. What's the pick that you want to highlight this week?
I'm going to go with the Packers here. I think it's a good buy low spot on Green Bay coming back home after 2 close road losses sandwiched around a bye. But Green Bay's been inconsistent, as you'd expect, with Jordan Love. For whatever reason, their offense is dead last in EPA per play in the first half, but number 1 in the NFL in the second half. And it's not like they're just getting blown out in all of these games and getting garbage time touchdowns. They've led in the fourth quarter in 3 of their 4 losses. 3 of their losses, I think, are by a combined 7 points. So they've been really close in games. they've also dealt with a ton of injuries across the board. So I don't think that they're as bad as some are saying and believe. And this is a good sell high spot of Minnesota after that big win over San Francisco on Monday night. They still allowed the highest success rate in the NFL last week, a net success rate of negative 15%. Kirk Cousins just had a bunch of explosives. You have to give him credit for that game. But I think that had more to do with the San Francisco injuries and the mistakes. And if you look when those mistakes came, a lot of them came after Purdy presumably suffered that concussion. This is a Minnesota defense that's blitzing a ton, and they're also just dropping way back to prevent explosive plays. You got to give Brian Flores, a new defensive coordinator, credit for what he's done with this unit that really lacks talent. But for what it's worth, small sample size, a lot of variance, but Jordan Love's been decent against the blitz this year. And that's how the 49ers want to move the ball. They want to run it and short passes. And that's how you can succeed against this Minnesota defense that ranks 25th in success rate against the run. And you can efficiently pass against them. You're also going to get Jair Alexander back here. That's big because you can put him on Addison, and Jefferson is still out for Minnesota. So still not a believer in this Vikings team. This is a great sell high spot. They're getting all the chirp. Oh, Minnesota sleeper in the NFC now. And that's just one game. We've seen this every week in the NFL. It's a week-to-week league. I think this is a good buy spot on the Packers at home as a dog.
Well, Stuckey, we remember what happened last week when you warned us about Detroit getting all the chirp. And sure enough, the Ravens took care of business. Raybon, any reaction to Stuckey's pick?
Yeah, I like it. I think that this is kind of a perfect spot for the Packers. You know, a lot of these NFC teams are just kind of in a glut together. There are a lot of mediocre teams. You know, Minnesota's not even as bad as its record. And then you saw what happened against the 49ers. And I think Green Bay is the same. And when you have a home underdog historically on a 3-game losing streak, you know, and now, you know, it tends to be when everyone's kind of down on them. Oh, this team can't do anything. 85-47, 64% against the spread over the last 2 decades. You would have had an ROI of 24% if you bet every one of those spots. So I think it's a good pick.
All right, very cool. Well, it's time to fade Rovell. He may have struggled again last week, so let's flash back to what happened.
This week is so easy, okay? It's Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins #1, Miami Dolphins. I mean, it's just so easy. I will take the Miami Dolphins right now, +2.5, and they will likely win the game, but I'm not going to push it. Oh, yeah. Well, they did get smoked. That was not good. That was not close. They did not likely come close to winning the game. All right. For this week, I am going with, sorry, guys, the Cincinnati Bengals +4.5. I'm sorry. This is just too good. I saw what the 49ers were last week. I'm not convinced Christian McCaffrey is healthy. Obviously, Brock Purdy can gut there. Sam Darnold is not the same as Brock Purdy. I just think as long as my Bengals offensive line, who they've just been horrible, can hold up, I think Joe Burrow's more healthy. Wow, what a good early buy here in the season for Joe Burrow. 4.5 is just great. I think the Bengals, like I said last week, I think the Bengals might win this game, but I'll take +4.5. This one is a definite no mush win for Fade Rovell this week. Sorry, boys.
Oh no!
I mean, I went 1-0 on hockey yesterday, so there's always hockey. There's always hockey for me. I just give up. I give up. I had my worst week in like 2 years last week, and now we're starting off with Rovell on my favorite play this week. So yeah, I'm washed. I'm just gonna go start betting hockey.
No, it can't be all bad. Stuckey, you gotta talk him off the ledge.
Yeah, this is bad. He's gonna win one of his next two. He's 2-5 on the year, so he's either gonna go 2-6. Or, you know, he'll go 3-5, then lose next week. So let's hope this is the one. I will say, Rovell's 1-0 when we match this year. We both had the Giants. So that is
Right.
our only saving grace, is that he's due. This is not a good sign for our Bengals bet. Yeah, Rovell has been a complete disaster, but one of his 2 wins I was on. The other one I didn't disagree with. So let's just hope that there's something there, because as soon as that orange popped up on the screen, my head just dropped. This is bad news.
Man.
Bad news.
I mean, I would have been screwed either way, because I also like Cleveland this week. So, I mean, whatever orange popped up, it was going to be bad.
Yeah, and the Bucks already played. So as soon as we saw the orange, it was bad news. So, yeah, we got to hope Rovell's due. He's probably going to go like, I would say, there's 18 weeks. My prediction, he's probably going to go like 6-12. And he's 2-5 right now. Right. So we got to hope this is one of the few winners that he has left.
Yeah, let's not forget all that great logic that you guys laid out just before we found out what Rovell's pick is. Like you said, 2-5. We'll see what happens. Raybon, best of luck to you. Stuckey's going to hang and talk some college ball, but we'll see you later. So, in college football, a pair of games between ranked opponents on Saturday at 3:30 Eastern. Number 8, Oregon at number 13, Utah. Oregon laying the points and getting majority of bets. Number 20, Duke, also visiting number 18, Louisville. So Stuckey is still here. I do want to get some quick thoughts on these ranked matchups before we get your pick. But Utah apparently has won 18 straight at home. College game day is going to be in town. What does Oregon have to do to avoid loss number 2 on the season for them?
Yeah, I think it goes back even further if you remove games without crowds. They're extremely tough to beat. And look, Bryce Eccles, one of the best home field advantages in all of college football. There's some just voodoo that happens there. And it's where opposing quarterbacks go to die. Bo Nix has been great. He's in the Heisman conversation. But for his career, he has not been great on the road. He's home Bo Nix and there's road Bo Nix. They're almost different people. So if I was an Oregon fan, I'd be really nervous that the ghosts of road Bo Nix come to play with matching up with the voodoo of Bryce Eccles Stadium. So, yeah, Nix has to just avoid mistakes here, costly mistakes. The Utah offense has found some juice the past 2 weeks. They moved a safety, Vaki, who's been awesome to running back, and he's given the offense some juice. Barnes is playing better, but this is the best defense that Utah will face all year. So this won't be an easy task. I think Oregon will get it done, but I'm not betting it. One of my rules of thumbs that I just rarely ever break is don't fade Utah at home. It's just not going to work out more times than not. So I think this line's a little inflated. I actually would lean towards Utah, but I'll stay on the sidelines here. It's going to come down to just, can Nix shake those road demons and avoid the voodoo of Bryce Eccles, not make mistakes, and get out of here with a hard-fought win and keep their Pac-12 and college football playoff chances alive, because they're still alive if they win out.
Yeah, I don't blame you for staying away with a home record like that. But as for Duke-Louisville, Duke lost to Florida State last week. Louisville also trying to bounce back from their only loss of the season, which was to Pitt a week ago. What do you expect in that one?
Yeah, this one's hard to handicap because you just don't know the status or what Riley Leonard's going to look like for Duke. Like, if he plays, his legs are so important. How mobile he's going to be? Can he last the whole game? And it's a good spot on paper for Louisville coming off of a bye after their first loss. But I haven't believed in this team all year. They barely beat Indiana. They barely beat Georgia Tech. They should have lost to NC State. And these aren't good teams either. So, yeah, they were getting away. They had that Pitt loss coming, even though, they outgained them by about 200 yards. But they had some turnover-worthy plays that were overdue. So I haven't been a believer in this Louisville team. I think this line's a little bit too high, but with the quarterback uncertainty that Duke is dealing with, and look, while Louisville's coming off a bye, they're coming off a hard-fought game against Florida State, so it's a good spot for Louisville. But with the number, I lean Duke, but just there's too much quarterback uncertainty. So as of now, it's wait and see for me.
Fair enough. What is the pick you are endorsing?
Last week I was called a homer for going with the Ravens, even though I've done nothing but fade them on this show. So let's get. I'm gonna get called a homer again. I'm gonna go in my backyard and go with the Kentucky Wildcats at home, catching over a field goal against Tennessee. I think this is a great spot to back Kentucky after 2 straight losses. They had a bye week, chance to reset. They lost to Georgia and Missouri. They had some issues along the offensive line. They had a couple defensive starters out, and their quarterback Devin Leary has been dealing with a mechanical issue. And he's been dealing with a mechanical issue after a pectoral injury. And I've heard reports that he's actually started to look okay. They've worked on the offense. The offensive line is healthier. They've had a lot of drop issues as well. These two teams profile very similarly, right? They can both run the ball. Tennessee has a trio of really good backs. Kentucky has Ray Davis. They both can stop the run. And they both have quarterbacks that are struggling with accuracy in Joe Milton and Devin Leary. But I think coming out of the bye, you're going to see a little more juice out of this Kentucky offense from everything that I'm hearing from people close to the program. And I just look, the way to beat this Kentucky defense is you have to methodically move the ball down through the air. And I don't trust Joe Milton to do that with any consistency. He's just not accurate enough. And from a spot perspective, like I mentioned before, Kentucky coming off of a bye, chance to get healthier, fresher, reset. While Tennessee, emotional win over Texas A&M in a really close game at home. Then you go to Alabama, you're leading at the half, and then you get just absolutely humiliated. And then the second half, get outscored by 27. That basically ended your chances of, going to the SEC championship, college football playoff. And now you're playing your 3rd straight game, second on the road against an SEC opponent. They are a little banged up as well. So I think this is a great spot to back Kentucky. I think Ray Davis will break a couple long runs, even though this Tennessee run defense has been great against the run. They have allowed far too many explosives. So I think Ray Davis did a few explosives. Leary will look a little better. And this Kentucky defense will shut down the Tennessee run game, which hasn't done anything on the road against competent rush defenses in Alabama and Florida. I think they've averaged 3.8 yards per carry, while they're close to 6 on the season when they went to Florida and Alabama. So, yeah, give me the Wildcats here. Call me a homer. Let's go Cats. Cats by 90. Not really. Probably Cats by 3.
Sometimes you got to embrace the homerism. And by the way, can you reveal where you're going to be watching the game?
Yeah, should be a good time out this weekend. I'll probably be up, make a stop. My wife runs 2 bars here. Stagger in, be there late night, but watch the game. 2 Keys Tavern in Lexington. Come find me. Drinks are on me as always.
I'm a little scared for you that we put that out there, but I'm sure it's going to be a good time. Stuckey, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Cheers.
To baseball, and here's how the 2 World Series teams got here. Both have gone 9-3 this postseason with comparable ERA and batting average. But Texas has stood out with runners in scoring position, driving in 17 more runs than Arizona. With that, we bring in our MLB experts, Sean Zerillo and Anthony Dabbundo. Let's start with a little series preview. Anthony, what are some keys we need to watch out for?
Yeah, so I think if you were to think about Arizona getting to this point, right, they pulled 3 consecutive upsets over the Brewers, the Dodgers, and the Phillies, 3 very different teams, and they've done it in a variety of different ways. But I think the most heralded part of what's worked for the Diamondbacks, they were a league average bullpen this entire season. Their starting rotation was solid, but not particularly deep. And they've gotten excellent production out of their pitching staff. Their bullpen, their top 2 relievers, Ginkel and Sewald, have not allowed a run in the playoffs. And their game calling and their defense from their catcher on throughout the entire field has been elite. So Gabriel Marino this year has been kind of the breakout star for them in these playoffs. They were 57-37, 60% win rate when he started games this year. So if you just looked at their overall record, you said, well, they're an 84-win team. They're not that good. That would give you one perception of them, but they've clearly played to a higher level in these playoffs. However, there is a real challenge for them in this series against this disciplined and very deep Rangers lineup. They identified after game 2 of the NLCS, when they were down 2-0 to Philly, that they were not pitching around the Philly hitters enough. They were throwing too many pitches in the zone, needed to take advantage of the fact that the Phillies chased one of the highest rates in all of MLB. That's just generally how they approach their at-bats. They swing at a lot of pitches, and they kind of just pitched around them and let them get themselves out for the entire series and won the series as a result. But this Texas lineup is bottom 3 in chase rate, and I think that's the biggest difference between Philly and Texas. as Arizona tries to overcome the fact that they're at a lineup disadvantage in both games. It's much harder to pitch around this Texas lineup because they're so much more disciplined. They will take their walks. So I think that's really the biggest edge for Texas in this series when you look at it. Otherwise, like starting pitching, it's pretty even.
Right. Well, let's get to how we want to bet this series. And Sean, we'll start with you. What's your favorite series prop?
Yeah, in terms of player props, Marcus Semien to get a hit, or not to get a hit, but I would assume he would get at least one hit, but to lead the series in hits at plus 950. He led the American League in hits this year with 185, 5 clear of Julio Rodriguez. And I think his pricing has just kind of been underrated relative to his teammates. Corey Seager being the World Series favorite, MVP favorite, certainly makes sense. But I expected Semien to be priced closer to guys like Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte, who are hitting at the top of the Diamondbacks batting order. And Seager has struggled in this postseason, or I should say Semien has struggled in this postseason, but looking at his plate discipline, the at-bats that he had later in that series in the ALCS against Houston, I think he's due for a breakout. 4 hits, 4 walks in his past 5 games and did not strike out over that span. So basically putting everything in play unless he's walking, and he's going to get more plate appearances than anybody else on this Texas team. So Semien to lead the World Series in hits at plus 950, I think is a good bet for a guy who led all of the American League hits in this season, on top of his World Series MVP odds, around 16-1, 18-1, depending where you shop around. There's about 6 guys I like to win the World Series MVP at numbers all higher than 16-1. Semien the shortest priced amongst them. And just want to mention Evan Carter. I think he's going to get a lot of love in the World Series MVP market. There's a chance that he does not start game 4 if the Diamondbacks go with Joe Mantiply at the start of that game. You saw him sit in favor of Robbie Grossman in the ALCS for a game and then come off the bench. So just wanted to mention Evan Carter. There are chances that the Diamondbacks match him up a lot more with lefties or start a lefty and don't put him on the starting lineup for a game as well. So Evan Carter going to be a sexy World Series MVP pick. I think I'm going to go with a guy who's much more sturdy and much more of a stable part at the top of their order, Marcus Semien.
Yes, sturdy over sexy. Sorry, I had to giggle a little bit at that one. But Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, so I was just talking about Marino and how good he is defensively. Gabriel Marino, the catcher for the Diamondbacks. Well, they've moved him up in their playoff order, up to 3rd in that Philadelphia series, and he's been hitting really well. His sub 20% K rate in the regular season and in the playoffs. So he's not striking out. He has not been overmatched by pitching that he's faced. And he's faced a lot of very good pitching through various points of this series, whether it's Corbin Burns or even Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, and they've hit, and he puts a lot of balls in play. And when you have 3 speed demons in front of him with Geraldo Perdomo, the 9-hitter who's been getting on base at a pretty good clip, and then Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll at the top of the lineup, they're going to be aggressive, trying to steal bases, running from first to second, turning singles into doubles, walks into doubles, and putting situations where Moreno is going to be the prime opportunity for them to drive in runs. And he's going to get pitches to hit, and he's been really impressive working at bats, not swinging at pitches out of the zone. I think that's perfect for what you want as your 3-hitter. He's not going to hit a ton of home runs potentially, but like I said, putting the ball in play is the key here. And he's 25-1 to lead the series in RBI. And I think he's probably the top RBI producer for them. He was in the series against the Phillies. I think he's a big part of how they score runs against this Texas pitching staff.
Okay, let's zero in a little bit more on game 1 specifically. So tonight, just after 8 Eastern in Texas. Sean, what are your picks?
Yeah, taking the Diamondbacks on the money line and also the under 8.5. The total did open at 8.5, moved down to 8, has climbed back up to 8.5 as of the time that we're talking. But projected Arizona closer to plus 135 in this game. You could get as high as plus 150 last night. That also has come down today. So on the right side of the money line, movement, it seems, maybe on the wrong side of the total, grabbing an 8 and watching it go back up. But those are the two sides and totals that I like in terms of the game 1 pricing. In terms of props, Corey Seager to get a walk tonight. As Anthony alluded to, they figured out how to pitch the Phillies later on in that series. I think he's going to take over the Bryce Harper role for the Diamondbacks in this series. I don't think they're going to give Seager much to hit and let him beat them. I would assume they would rather let the rookie Evan Carter or other guys in that lineup, the other righties in that lineup particularly, try to beat them. Better matchups for Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly and Brandon Pfaadt to go against rather than the lefties. Also, Nathan Eovaldi, Zach Gallen, both to get over 15.5 outs tonight. Both of those bullpens getting used very extensively in their respective series as both teams went to 7 games, but also they're going to need both of their bullpens fully ready for game 4 in this series when both teams are expected to go with the bullpen game. And then also as we turn over later in the series and what we expect to be a longer series, you're going to want those bullpens ready and fresh. So even if one of these starters gives up some runs tonight and we do trend towards that over, get some early runs, 4-0, 5-0 early, I would expect their manager to just let the pitcher keep going and accumulate the innings in order to keep that bullpen fresh. So Seager to walk plus 135, both pitchers over 15.5 outs. You can get plus money on Gallen. You have to lay juice on Eovaldi. And then the Diamondbacks and the under as well. A bunch of ways to bet game 1.
Yes, plenty of options. And even though you might not be betting it, just for fun, I do want to ask your overall series predictions. Anthony?
Yeah, I'm going with the Rangers in 6. And I know that, they just took out my beloved Phillies, and I have been against Arizona the last couple series and probably underestimated them to this point. But I think the Rangers bats are just too deep and too disciplined for Arizona to pull this off again. I'm fully prepared to be memed if this does not go well, but the snakes are dead. They are no longer alive. It was a nice run. Rangers win in 6.
I mean, Sean, how can you beat that? Did you bring a prop?
No props for me. No dead snakes. No nothing. But I do agree with Anthony in terms of the prediction. If you just look at the pricing around the market, the books that are a little bit sharper, you do see that Texas 4-2 exact result, game to end or series to end in exactly 6 games, exact result. All of those props are just a little bit de-juiced at the sharper books relative to everywhere else. So I do think Rangers in 6 is the right opinion. I also like the series to go over 5.5 games. You have to lay about minus 170 to bet that. But I do think either way, we're headed back to Texas with somebody in a 3-2 lead.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for setting the stage for us. And for many more bets and insights, check out the Payoff Pitch podcast. World Series preview is out now. Anthony is going to stick around for some soccer, but Sean will say bye for now. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you for having me.
So 4 matchups on Saturday in the Premier League. Chelsea hosts Brentford bright and early, here on the East Coast anyway. Then it's Arsenal taking on Sheffield United, Bournemouth versus Burnley, and Wolverhampton against Newcastle. So it's time for Bet and Breakfast. Back here with Anthony. What will you be betting tomorrow along with your morning cup of coffee, maybe a glass of milk? OJ?
Yes, I will be betting Brentford plus a half, plus 135 with my glass of milk tomorrow morning at 7:30. I only make Chelsea about minus 124 here in my numbers. Look, Chelsea's made some major improvements this year. Their field tilt numbers, they've been more dominant with their press. Their defense is elite this season. They just had a really impressive showing against Arsenal, and the market has handsomely upgraded them. And I think it's a deserving upgrade of them. But I think the market is still too low on this Brentford team. There are still some concerns with Chelsea. It's their attacking output that has not quite matched up. If you look at their expected goals created, they're just 9th this season. That's Chelsea out of 20 teams in XG per 90. They're 11th in shots, 12th in big scoring chances. And so Chelsea isn't quite firing on all cylinders in attack. They still don't really have the striker problem solved to this point. And now they're facing the most efficient out of possession defense in the Premier League. Brentford will concede space. They will concede time. They will give you possession of the ball, but they do not allow clear chances in their penalty area very often. They're a very stout defense. They're very good on set pieces. It's why they've been the most profitable underdog in the Premier League for the last 2 years. They pretty much have the same profile every year. They rotate in some talent. Guys come and go. They have some injuries, but the core of this team has been really impressive and really underrated by the market for the last 2 years. So I like the Bees. I know they've been in a bit of a rough patch of form, but if you look at the underlying results and performances in those games, it's right around what we expect from Brentford. They've just had a few bounces go against them. So I like the Bees catching a half a goal here on the road. Think they have the best attacking player in this game in Brian Mbeumo as well.
Anthony Dabbundo, thanks so much for the advice. Enjoy your glass of milk, buddy. Coming up this weekend on Action Network, don't miss BBOC Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, the Power Hour with Convince Me and the Touchdown Show starting at 11 a.m. Sunday, and the favorites just before Sunday Night Football. And in case you missed any of our great content from the past week, here are the highlights.
James Franklin has been a very good coach when he doesn't coach against Ohio State and Michigan. And after seeing him play Ohio State, I have no confidence that they're going to be able to compete against Michigan. I don't see that happening. You know, you asked me a couple weeks ago, I would have said Penn State's a lock for a New Year's Six game. now, make your reservations for the Citrus Bowl, because they're going to fall out of the top 12. And that's where I think they end up, unless somehow they find some kind of magic.
Last week against the Chargers, the Cowboys were not getting, and Hutton, you can play it here, the Cowboys were not getting to Justin Herbert at all, but they were getting to him nonstop in terms of pressure, right? They had so many QB pressures. And then finally, it was almost on cue at the end of the game, a 2-minute warning. Joe Buck says Micah Parsons hasn't gotten to Justin Herbert yet. And then immediately, Micah Parsons shoots right up the middle.
The luckiest team so far this season has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've been exactly the second most lucky team in 3 of 6 weeks this year. They're 4-0 in one-score games this year. The 2 losses were blowouts, so they've just benefited a ton from one-score game luck. And they're actually the luckiest team we've had in luck rankings over the last 6 years at this point in the season.
Nottingham Forest +1.5, +115 at Liverpool. We talked about this game and how they're playing a different style, more low event. I think Taiwo Awoniyi might be back here. That's a major upgrade for them. But really, it's just the Zag energy from this team being very effective at keeping teams out of their penalty area, conceding space and possession, but not conceding dangerous possession, and being a league average defense as a result of that makes them a live dog here. So Forest +1.5.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. Another week in the books for Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again Monday at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app. Have a great weekend.